Good afternoon and welcome to the Asian Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Kelvin Wong, Market Strategist at CMC Markets. Now, Kelvin, as always, thanks for coming in this Thursday.
My pleasure, Brian. Good to speak to you again.
Now, Kelvin, before we get your insights, I'm going to take a quick look around the region to see how markets are performing, but we'll start off with crypto markets, where there is a lot of activity. Now, Bitcoin is at 65,011. It's up 1.5%. Ethereum is well above the 4,000 mark now, 4,166.94. It's up 8%. Now, looking across regional markets, we've got the Nikkei, which is at 28,788.32. It's down 1.6%. The Shanghai Composite is at 3,603.62. It's up 0.46%. The Hang Seng is at 26,060. It's down 0.29%. The ASX 200 is at 7,420. It's up 0.09%. The Kospi is down 0.03% at 3,012.18. Closer to home, we've got Bursa Malaysia, which is at 1,599.08. It's down 0.45%. Rounding up the numbers, we've got the SGX, which is at 3,197.78. It's down marginally at 0.01%. Now, Kelvin, give us your perspective on these mixed performances across markets.
Yes. So what we could see now, maybe let's highlight the positive performance first. Was definitely the on average we start to see pretty much superb or fantastic Q3 US earnings. Tesla has really reported its earnings after the close of yesterday US session. Earnings beat, revenue about coming in line. Then what we could see is that the Dow Jones Industrial Average starts to reach into a all-time high yesterday at the close of yesterday US session. So this is a positive kind of a feedback loop that we get from the US stock market. Uptrend still intact, recovery play since the 4 weeks low. So over in Asia over here, we got another problem, which is the other end of the spectrum that is acting as an opposite force. We call it the negative factors. Will be number one, will be the Evergrande liquidity crunch issue starts to, I mean, it's real, its heads again. One thing of the highlight over here is actually two aspects to highlight over at Evergrande liquidity crunch issue right now that most traders are actually looking at. Is number one is yesterday actually announced that it has a failed business transaction because they intend to sell away their property management arm, which it didn't manage to because they are in need of cash right now. So then secondly over here is that there's actually a bond, okay, offshore bond that is was due in 23rd of September. So they missed the payment. So once this payment is being missed, they enter into a 30-day grace default period, which is approaching very soon this week. If you look at, if you do the sums,
So end of the week, right?
Yes, correct.
No,
so nothing is being, so nothing is being said about that yet till now, because we don't know how they're going to settle this particular payment that's already due. Because you see, at the end of the day, if it's missed that 30-day default period, technically the bondholders will actually call them into a default. Technically, they are in default situation. So but despite that, over here is that the China Central Bank last Friday gave a kind of a I would say it's rather explicit assurance that whatever we see in Evergrande crisis right now, it will not be spilled over to the broader economy. So they actually want to contain it. But until something is being said regarding about this, or some action that's being done regarding about this situation, about this series of missed coupon payments from their offshore bonds of Evergrande, market are still jittery about this effect about Evergrande. So that's why you could see the share price of Evergrande actually plumb this today's
it went down as
Hong Kong trading.
10%, right? And then it bounced back up.
Yes. Correct. So the thing about it's still negative, you see. So I think the all-time low is at 1.83, the one that's listed in Hong Kong. So investors are actually watching very closely the sentiment of the share price of Evergrande. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that's interesting that picked up in markets is basically Bitcoin and Ethereum have been on a charge. So Bitcoin is at 64,000 plus. Ethereum is currently at, Bitcoin is at 64,000, almost reaching the 65,000 mark, and Ethereum is now at 4,165. What's the view on the reasons for the rise of cryptos, and is this sustainable?
Okay, so if we look at the current situation right now, I would say that from the short to medium term, it's probably sustainable. Why? Because from a regulatory standpoint, especially for US, because if you look at US in the last 1.5 years or so, there has been a bit of hesitant of accepting Bitcoin as a mainstream investment for the retail public, because there's a lot of reasons to it. It could be money laundering, it could be some, issues with the regulators that do not want Bitcoin to actually go into the mainstream. But what we see yesterday or 2 days ago, there's this official launch of a Bitcoin ETF. Okay, it's not an ETF based on the spot market, it's an ETF based on the derivative. It's all about Bitcoin
Okay.
futures that is trading on CME. So it's something like an ETF. It's a commodity related ETF, like an oil ETF that's based on the oil futures rather than
Yeah.
the spots. So but that kind of acceptance is a kind of first step by the US regulator, sending a signal to the rest of the world, say, hey, right now more acceptance to Bitcoin as a mainstream asset. Okay,
Okay.
so that actually drive up the momentum and sentiment of Bitcoin, at least in the short to medium term. So what we could see now, yes, definitely Bitcoin is leading the fort right now. You look at Bitcoin versus the USD, is yesterday actually breached its previous all-time high of 64,900 that was
Yeah.
seen in April this year. So what we could see that momentum is still pretty much healthy. So what I could say that the next resistance level in the short term will be around 71,360. So as long as this
Oh,
short-term support holds, yeah,
wow.
which is
Okay.
at 57,500, it could actually potentially maintain this kind of a potential upside momentum towards the next resistance, short-term resistance at 71,360. But it got to hold at this key support at 57,500 level. So definitely the rest of the crypto space is playing catch up as well. So we see Ethereum is a bit lagging behind this time round because of everything is being favored to the Bitcoin. So as long as Bitcoin able to maintain its momentum, I believe that it will have a positive spillover effect to Ethereum as well. Because you look at the current trajectory of Ethereum is still upward trending. So it's about
Right.
now based on yesterday closing price, Ethereum per USD is around 5% away from its current all-time high.
So, Kelvin, I want to ask you another thing which is dominating market sentiment now. Thoughts
Mm,
about inflation.
yes.
What is your view on this?
Okay, so this problem thing about inflation right now is a bit yes, it's definitely a major problem in the next 3 or 6 months from now, going to the market, because right now if you look at what the market is actually looking at, especially US stock market, is they are actually not pricing in the risk of inflation having into impact of company earnings, right? So most of them are not pricing in yet. So that's why that led to the current rally that we see in Dow Jones, you see in S&P, you see Nasdaq 100. So if you look at the numbers from the bond market, the US Treasury bond market, so it's an implied forward-looking inflation. We call it the 5-year break-even. So it's an estimate of
Okay.
what's inflation 5 years from now, from today,
All
implied
right.
from the trading of the US Treasury market. So based on yesterday's closing price is at 2.77%, which actually surpassed the January or the May high that was seen this year at 2.72%, where the Fed start to talk about tightening about their QE measures at that point now. So it really surpassed that peak. And right now, it's actually coming close to a 16-year high. Mind you, it's a 16-year high, not a 5-year
Wow.
high. So what it's implying in the bond market right now is that, hey, inflation right now is important to the bond market, but it hasn't been priced into the equity market yet. So now
Okay.
there's a mismatch, you see. So once if this 5-year break-even inflation keeps on going higher and it start to spill over to the 10-year break-even, because the 10-year break-even haven't hit the 16-year high yet, and the
Okay.
10-year break-even right now, it's still I would say that it's still below the 2013 high. So it
Okay.
hasn't reached a 16-year high or 15-year high yet. So when it start to spill over to the longer end of the curve, so that could be a problem where company earnings may get impacted, where analysts consensus will start to reprice or on the downside. That means there will be a downward reversion of earnings optimism. Okay,
Okay.
so one that's come into the picture, right, it may create a negative feedback loop into equity prices. So that we got to be mindful, especially into the first quarter of next year.
Okay. Okay. Kelvin, that's interesting insights. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Brian, as usual.
Now, we've been speaking to Kelvin Wong, market strategist at CMC Markets on Biztech Asian Midday Marketwatch. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our various platforms as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various social media platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.